Hello, everyone. This is a very interesting topic for me. I'd like to thank Julian and Toft, Ritu, all of you for giving me a chance to speak about it. It was when I first heard about it a month ago. It wasn't a very straightforward thing that I usually do, where I go ahead and make a presentation with what I know and get information about what I don't know. This one actually had a little bit of thought that I needed to put in. It was about favorites. There were words like best thrown in, which I kind of like became uncomfortable with. So let me see. I've tried to do justice based on my thought process and experience in my roamings in India, but we'll see how that goes. So yes, Indian mammals. So the first question for me was which ones are the best? I love elephants. I mean, I live in a place surrounded by elephants. I see elephants almost every day. So they're definitely one of the best things for me. But there are other facets to the topic that was given to me. So there is the best five, of course. They have to be least known animals, and you have to be able to see them in India. So there were different factors that I had to play with before coming up with a list of five. And just to give them all equal weightage, I'm going to run you through the thought process and why certain members made it or didn't make it at the start. So to start with, the first mammal that came to my mind was the Malabar Civet. Why is the Malabar Civet special? Because it is least known. We just know the animal from a few skins around Cochin. There's a lot of controversy about the actual existence of the animal. And if someone really wants to go looking for something super rare in India, I would say go looking for this one and try to prove that it exists or does not exist. And so that is one of the things that came to my mind to start with, the Malabar Civet. In fact, we have no pictures of the animal. That's why a friend of mine, Satyan, did a beautiful artwork for us to use in our South India book. So the Malabar Civet, yes, but I also had to talk about where it can be found. So I didn't have an answer to that for sure. So I decided to skip this one. So there were various animals that came to my mind when I started putting down a list. And to be honest, I forgot to read the part where it said the best five when I read the topic. So I made a list of 32. So then I had to filter down to five. So the Indian pangolin, of course, the most trafficked animal on the planet, was definitely one amongst the things which I want to think about. But is it really unique? Is it really unique in terms of an Indian context? And do I really have a place where we can actually see them in these days? The answer was no. So I had to skip over a few of them like that. Another thought process that I was trying to toil with was the fact that how important is a mammal to a habitat. So this one, the silvery mountain vole, along with the Stolixka's mountain vole, are solely responsible for creating wetland habitats in the high Himalayas. These wetland habitats are the breeding grounds for birds, but because of their constant digging, these voles actually loosen the soil and encourage the regrowth of vegetation, apart from the fact that their sheer numbers makes them enough of a prey base for the birds and the raptors to breed in that area. So definitely a flagship important species for the creation of a habitat. But is it one of the best? Again, maybe I think so, but I didn't think the audience would think so. So I decided to skip on this one too. So, and of course, the great question these days is, do we have Eurasian otters in India or not? So this is a photo of a Eurasian otter from me from the Indus in Ladakh, one of the rarest mammals. At that time, it was thought to be seen in India. But interestingly, all over Sri Lanka, all you get are Eurasian otters. And between Ladakh and Sri Lanka, you have the whole Indian subcontinent. So what about the otters in India? Are they Eurasian otters or smooth-coated otters? So there's a big question happening, and there are some camera trap evidences showing that Eurasian otters exist in central India and parts of the western and eastern Ghats. So this is the big question now. But again, can I pinpoint a place to see them, or can I say they're one of the best? And one of the biggest factors to not think of the Eurasian otter is the fact that it is found in the rest of Europe and rest of Asia. It's only a problem in India. So again, is it an animal that is unique to the landscape? I wouldn't think so. And of course, there is the question of the lesser or the ignored carnivores or the ignored large mammals of India. One of them is a striped hyena, the living evidence that India and East Africa at one point were together as one landmass. So the striped hyena and the honey badgers are some mammals that show that the same species existed between parts of Western India and parts of Eastern Africa. Again, an animal which is not very well understood in India. We know we have populations in Kutch, in the Aravalis, and parts of central India, and even in parts of the Deccan. But how well do we know them? We don't have an answer yet. The Grasslands Trust in Pune are doing some work on the hyenas, but again, is it unique? Of course not, because we just spoke about the hyena's existence in Africa. So there were many questions like this which I was toiling with when I thought about different species that I can work with. What about the fastest antelope in the world, the black buck? Again, native to India. It is the fastest antelope in the world. Not many people know that. In fact, one of the biggest questions for the cheetah reintroduction was, will they be able to hunt the black buck? Are they too fast for them? So this is a beautiful, beautiful antelope which brought about such questions and was in the news and is there in the news on and off. But unfortunately, because of our destruction of our flatland forests and our grasslands, a lot of the population now lives in fields and fallow land. So a lot of thought went into using the black buck as one of the five, but I decided against it for no great reason, actually, to be honest. So, of course, we also have the largest wild goat species in the world, the Kashmir Marco, which is found in Kazinag in the borders of India and Pakistan. Again, a species which is slowly being understood. There are local guides who are doing a fantastic job in finding them. But do we actually have a viable population that can be conserved? Is it actually a place where people can go and see them without the dangers of the political issues that the local area faces? I wasn't too sure, so the Markhor was put aside for the time being. And then we always don't think of bats when we talk about mammals. Why aren't they ever in the best mammals list? In fact, this one, the Rotten's free-tailed bat, is actually the only bat species in India after whose protection there was a sanctuary that was named. So Bhimgad Wildlife Sanctuary in northern Karnataka was set up just to protect the roosting area of the Rotten's free-tailed bat. So that's how cool this bat is. It's a fantastic species, a flagship species that has led to the creation of a wildlife sanctuary, much like our tigers. But is it spoken about that much? Not really. And is it a species that a lot of people would go out to seek and see? Unfortunately, no, not at the time being. There's a lot of sensitization work that needs to be done with bats before that is possible. And of course, whether you like bats or not, you're going to love the painted bat. It's the most beautiful of the bats. Every time one person sees a painted bat, they're going to fall in love or at least get curious about the world of bats. But again, this species is spread all across South and Southeast Asia. So definitely not something unique to India. And we also always forget about our mammals which live outside terra firma. We have one of the three species of blind dolphins in the world, the Gangetic River dolphin, along with the Yangtze dolphin and the South American pink dolphin, are the three species of blind dolphins, which are fish eaters. And we have them in India. I think it's the national aquatic mammal, if I'm not mistaken. And the Chambal is a very, very good place to see them. But have you understood them? Have you understood the conservation issues behind them? Have you really understood why it is not possible to save them in some stretches of river, whereas it's possible to save them in others? Of course, there's pollution, there's damming, there's overfishing. There's a lot of issues. So the Gangetic River dolphin, yes, definitely one of the best mammals in India, but did it make it to today's five? I don't think so. We also have the dugong, entirely dependent on the offshore seagrass off the coast of Andamans, Tamil Nadu, parts of Kutch. Again, an animal which we are losing constantly because of poaching for bushmeat. I don't think you'll call it bushmeat in the ocean, but whatever you call it there. We are losing a lot of the dugongs because of that, and also because of the use of heavy trawlers for fishing. A lot of them get stuck in the nets or get injured by the metal parts, and there is a huge problem with the dugong. So there are many, many such species which we can talk about. Like I said, I made a list of 32 along with the help of some of my friends. We actually have a venomous / poisonous mammal in our country. The slow loris of Northeast India actually combines its saliva along with a secretion from its upper arm and licks that secretion all over its body to make sure it is not troubled by predators. So it's actually a poisonous / venomous mammal. We have, of course, the endemic charismatic lion-tailed macaques of the Western Ghats. We have our own species of wolves. We have the Pallas's cat in parts of Sikkim and Ladakh. We have beautiful endemic flying squirrels like the Travancore flying squirrel. And we have the odd weird mountain goat, which is there in South India. whereas all the mountain goat species are there in the Himalayas and the rest of the world. But in a disconnected way, there exists a small population of Nilgiri Thar in the southern Western Ghats. Again, how it came about, why is it there and not anywhere else? There are so many questions that need to be answered about so many mammals, which makes them all best in their own ways. There are some of them ask questions about habitat, some of them ask questions about behavior, some of them are just great to look at. So there is so many different ways to perceive the best mammal theories. And in fact, we don't even want to rule out odd-looking individual mammals. Can you believe the one, we all know the black panthers exist in India, but did we know that there is a pseudo-melanistic leopard, the one on the top left? This one was photographed in Parambikulam in South India. So I think if I see that, I would say that's the best mammal I've ever seen. I mean, it looks so weird. It looks totally like something, like someone took a leopard and started painting on it. That's how beautiful it is. And of course, we have the stories of the black tigers of Simlipal. And this is a camera trap image from the forest department. And you can see a normal looking tiger cub in the back, and one of the cubs is actually heavily streaked. So that's the black tiger Simlipal. So there is very many ways to perceive how a mammal can be the best or not. So I've tried to choose 5. I've tried to do my best. So we'll start with the first one of them. Of course, this is the place where we find them, Singalila National Park in West Bengal. Actually, it's the border between West Bengal and Nepal. The border road to Sandakpur is the best road to see this mammal at the foothills of Kanchenjunga. It's a beautiful, beautiful oak and rhododendron forest with a forest floor covered in dense bamboo. So when we think about bamboo and dense forests, of course, we all think about the panda, but in India, we have the red panda. So this is a very weird animal. It's a monotypic animal. It's as in when I say that, I mean that it is a unique animal. It is not related in any way to any other animals that we know of. A lot of people thought it's closely related to the raccoons and coatis, but recent studies show that they have their own lineage and their own genus. So that is a red panda, a beautiful, beautiful Himalayan species. And interestingly, you can see the global range here. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was about 2 years ago that they were separated by the flow of the Brahmaputra River. So the population in parts of India and Nepal and Bhutan became a separate species as compared to the population in South China. So the red panda is now quite unique to India. So the Ailuris fulgens, this species is now a species that's unique to the Indian subcontinent. And this population is best seen in Singalila National Park in the Indo-Nepalese border. So here the interesting thing is, not very recently, people thought seeing a red panda was very, very difficult, something very similar to the snow leopard story. But a few villagers got together, started making homestays where they used to entertain trekkers who wanted to climb towards the Sandakpur top. But on the way, they realized that they were seeing red pandas and they realized how to find them. So there was a lot of natural history involved. There is a whole process to finding these red pandas in the forest. I mean, you can see that the forests are very dense. They're full of leaf litter. They're very moist. So it can be very difficult to find an animal which pretty much spends most of the day sleeping in the trees. So then how do you look for an animal like that in the forest like that? So the locals learned from the researchers working there. They had their own innate skills in finding them. So they realized that the natural history, the daily activity cycle of the panda was important. And also the fruiting seasons in the forest was important in finding them. And over the last few years, it has become a reality in finding a red panda, especially in villages like Kalapokri, Jobari, Kayakata. There are a few villages where the villagers have really figured out how to find red pandas, and seeing them is actually a reality in the wild now. And when you talk about seeing red pandas in the forest, we're not just looking at red pandas. The beauty of it is you're actually exploring a beautiful Himalayan forest called Sandakpur, or Singalila, as the whole landscape is called, which is full of bird life, as you can imagine the Himalayas to be. It's a great place to look for pandas, but apart from that, it's a great place to look for things like yellow-throated martins, endemic birds like blood pheasants, spotted laughing thrushes. People have seen clouded leopards. People have seen the serau, which is a goat antelope family species, which is found in the Himalayas. So there was a whole list of species that people started seeing because the red panda became a flagship species they started looking for. And slowly what happened was the quality of the accommodations improved, the quality of the guides improved, the different people from all over the world started coming to see the red pandas over there. So it has definitely had a kind of, how do I put it, a reaction amongst the people to realize that there is value in protecting this animal. So that is kind of how giving an animal importance has led to the protection of the forest. We always talk about it in the context of the tiger, talking about umbrella species and all of that. But in its own right, the red panda is an umbrella species of this forest. So despite the fact that it is seen over a wide area in Bhutan, Nepal, parts of Arunachal Pradesh, why is this place unique? It's simply because the locals have made it possible to actually find this animal. And they've actually made brilliant rules that you can only see a panda for, I think, 20 minutes to half an hour every time you find it. After that, you have to back off whether the panda is staying or not staying, simply because they don't want to disturb it and they want to make sure the whole tourism model there is sustainable. Um, I found that pretty brilliant when I went and saw the pandas over there. And more than anything, I was quite intrigued by the tracking skills of the locals in the forest and how well they knew their forest and knew their pandas and how they knew how to run tourism, especially keeping in mind a lot of problems we are facing in modern Indian tourism scenarios in different parts of the country. So, yes, the first mammal, of course, was the red panda. And moving to the other side of the Indian subcontinent, I'd like to take you closer to where I am now. Uh, this is the world of the Nilgiri Martin. I mean, this is an animal which is there in the heart of the Western Ghats. It is probably in the most well-studied rainforest landscape on the planet, but we still don't know much about the Nilgiri martins. We don't know how many are there. We don't know how they breed, where they breed. We don't know whether they actually, how far north they extend. I know the northernmost record is in central Karnataka in Someshwara Wildlife Sanctuary near Agumbe, but then otherwise we have them all the way till the southern tip in Kanyakumari. So this is the range map of the Nilgiri martin simply based on sightings and camera trap studies. But we've not been able to pinpoint a habitat or where they're found or why they're found or what are the requirements for a population of Nilgiri martins to flourish. In fact, in the Nilgiris, when I go out, I know there's a pair in one valley and there's one individual in another valley, but we can't really form a species map for this one apart, despite the fact that all these areas are so well studied, simply because there are so many gaps in the knowledge of this amazing animal. So this is a typical shola forest in the Western Ghats of South India, grasslands and forests in the valleys. And usually this is what we associate with in finding Nilgiri martins. And usually when you see one, you just see one, it's a surprise, it's there for a few minutes or a few seconds and then it's gone. It's a very active diurnal animal. It spends the nights in trees. It also spends a little bit of the daytime in trees. And otherwise, the most often they are seen when they're crossing between forest patches or crossing grassland patches. So this is what we thought we knew of the Nilgiri martin. But interestingly, this photo was taken near my house in a lowland scrub forest of a Nilgiri martin that walked past my front yard. So this is much lower as compared to what we thought the Nilgiri martins occupied. So this is a new revelation for me and for some of the people who are studying Nilgiri martins, that can they come this low? Actually, I mean, what do we really know about these animals when we are surprised by habitats that they are seen in these days? So Nilgiri martin definitely full of surprises. And just to give you an idea, they look beautiful, they look cute, but you have to realize that they are one of the most active, aggressive hunters in the forest. They are fearless. I don't usually like to use emotions like that when I describe a mammal. But in this case, it is true because they can actually take down, they actually don't hesitate going for prey which is larger than themselves. I mean, I've even seen them come chasing a whole group of trekkers. And they chase them for a while and try to snap at them and bite them because they just are aggressive like that and they don't really back off to threat. And there have been records of them hunting mouse deer, jungle fowl, squirrels, and even larger mammals like Nilgiri langur. So they can be quite, in some ways, the top predator in their own ecosystem. So Nilgiri martins, diurnal, hunt in the forest floor, hunt in the trees, very active through the day. Until we saw this happen. A friend of mine, Hadley from Munna, photographed this pair of Nilgiri Martins hunting bats in a tree hollow. Just when we thought we had figured these animals out, they were going into tree hollows and they were hunting bats. And he couldn't get a picture of it, but uh, they actually came out of the hollow with bats every time they went in, which is pretty amazing considering that this is an animal that is so versatile. In fact, I've even heard stories of them being seen in coffee plantations when the fruit is ripe. Suddenly, there is an altitudinal movement of these martins coming to the lower slopes to feed on the coffee berries because that acts like a supplement for them in the summer months before they go back in the rains back to the higher slopes. So there is a lot we need to understand about this species. But the one thing I know, which I can say for sure, is the best place to see them is Pambadamshola National Park in Kerala. It is actually one of the most beautiful, pristine Shola rainforest habitats that I know of, where they have very well organized walks. It is a stone's throw from Munnar town, which is a very popular tourism destination in South India. So you can go there, just purchase a ticket. The forest department guides and the local guides in Munnar, like Sendil, Hadley, and a few others, they really know their wildlife and their martins well. So you have a really genuine chance of seeing a martin, apart from many other species that you can encounter in Pambadamshola when you go to this place. So definitely a species that is slowly being better understood. But are we there in the same standard as we are there with the red pandas? I don't think so. So it is a species that is still something that excites me every time I see one when I'm walking the Western Ghats. Okay, so how can we not have cats in our list of species? We have to have cats. We are a country with 15 species of wild cats. At least one of them has to be the best. And I chose this one, the rusty spotted cat, Proenalurus rubiginosus. This is a cat I came across for the first time, I think 9 years ago when I was working in Satpura, a place, I think Ali is amongst us, and he is another person who knows this cat very well because it is one of the best places to see these cats is Satpura Tiger Reserve in central India. But why is the rusty spotted cat there in this list? And why not a lynx or a caracal or a tiger or a clouded leopard? There are two reasons for this. One is that the rusty spotted cat is the smallest wild cat on the planet. I don't know how many of you know this, but there's an even cooler reason for the rusty spotted cat to be in the list. It is the only cat that is endemic to the Indian subcontinent, which is a very interesting fact because we assume the Bengal tigers are Indian, we assume fishing cats are Indian, we assume desert cats are Indian. None of them are Indian because they're actually found well outside the Indian subcontinent limits, going all the way into Southeast Asia or into China or even into parts of Africa like the golden cat and the jungle cat. So the rusty spotted cat is found all the way till I think central Rajasthan, the Aravallis, and all the way to the southern tip of India. So this is, and of course, Sri Lanka. That's why I say subcontinent. So within most of India and Sri Lanka is the only range of this tiny, tiny cat. As you can see here, this map is not entirely accurate. You can actually say the rusty spotted cat is found in the Aravallis too, in this place, in this area. But for some reason, this map does not include that. Maybe this is an older map. But yes, it is found in Rajasthan also. In fact, Bera or Jawai, as it's popularly known now, is one of the best places also to see them. So just to give you a size comparison, this is a rusty spotted cat with a rodent in its mouth. You can see that the cat is not that big. In fact, it is like the size of a kitten. It gets to about 1.5 kilograms. And that is a very rare kill for rusty spotted cats because they pretty much feed on insects, crickets, locusts. They feed on spiders. They feed on geckos. They feed on all kind of small animals that they can overcome. And as you can imagine, with most of the small cats, this one is also a nocturnal animal. And in fact, it spends the days usually in tree hollows. That's a very interesting thing about this rusty spotted cat. It actually spends the days in tree hollows and comes down to the forest floor at night to hunt. One of the most memorable encounters I've had with the rusty spotted cat, which actually got me reading a little bit more about them, was the fact that I was walking in Satpura behind Forsyths and I came across a sloth bear, and the sloth bear scared another animal away. And I saw the animal that it was a rusty spotted cat sitting at the base of a tree. But for some reason, it refused to budge from there, despite the fact that both us and the sloth bear were quite close by. And then I moved my light to further up the tree, and I saw these two kittens just emerge from a tree hollow. So they are actually giving birth or keeping their young ones safe in tree hollows. So that's a very unique behavior for a cat as compared to most of the other cats that we know of in India. So they actually use tree hollows and come down at night to hunt. So around 1.5 kilograms, a very tiny cat, something that's most often easily overlooked. And also most of these small cats are very sensitive to habitat. So development doesn't do well with them. All the cliches that we throw around with development versus conservation apply to the rusty spotted cat. But there's another interesting problem that this cat faces, which is that it is very comfortable in semi-urban and rural areas. So, like this cat we photographed in someone's household. So, there are cats which thrive at the edges of villages, sometimes giving birth to kittens in rooftops of thatched houses instead of trees. So, in such scenarios, what happens is there is a lot of crossbreeding or spoiling the gene pool of the pure rusty spotted cat. So, they also cross with a lot of house cats, and we've actually seen this happen in a few places where we've seen rusty spotted cats which look perfectly like a rusty spotted cat, except they look twice as big. So there are that is another major issue with a lot of small cats, but more so for the rusty spotted cat and the jungle cat because of their ability to thrive and for their affinity towards semi-urban and rural areas and not just forests. So this is a very rare photo, one of the best photos I've seen of the rusty spotted cat from Tadoba. Someone came across this family on a safari in Tadoba. So, and Tadoba definitely is coming up as one of the best places to see the rusty as well. But for now, as far as I know, go to Satpura Tiger Reserve in the summer months or Bera, and you have a very genuine chance of seeing a rusty spotted cat around the lodges where you're staying in. So yes, rusty spotted cat, the only cat species that made the list, at least made my list. But moving on, I'd like to take you to a very, very unique habitat, with the habitat which is as unique as this animal, the Sangai or the brow antler deer. For this we need to go to Loktak Lake in Manipur. So this lake is very, very interesting. And this national park, Cable Lambja, is probably one of the most unique national parks on the planet. And that is because it is the only known floating national park on the planet. It sounds very strange when I say it, but it's true. So this is Loktak Lake. It's a photo by a friend of mine who was there recently. And what you're looking at are not crop circles, are not done by aliens. This is actually a thing called fumdis, Phumdis, fumdis. So fumdis are large masses of vegetation which are like icebergs floating in this lake, and they're below the water. They go up to 2 to 3 meters deep, and their roots touch the wet ground of the lake bed to suck in nutrients. And these fumdis keep floating through the lake. And when I talk about fumdis, don't imagine them to be small. Some of them can be as big as 40 square kilometer. In fact, Cable Lamjau is one of the floating fumdis, which is 40 square kilometer in this 200 square kilometer lake. So that 40 square kilometer floating island is Cable Lamjau National Park, and which is basically a fumdi. And just to explain it a bit better, you can see these circles are not natural. So there are natural fumdis like this, but these circles are put together by the local fishermen so that they are able to form fumdis of their own, which helps them gather fish together and helps them hunt. And some of them actually have built houses on these floating islands, some of the local people. I think you can see a settlement over here, somewhere here. That's a settlement over there, I think. So some of them actually built very rudimentary houses in these fumdis. So the largest fumdi is Cable Lamjau National Park, and this is how you go on safari in these inside the fumdi. So basically, you have these narrow alleyways of water, which you push aside with your legs. You can actually push aside an entire island with your leg. If you just use your oar as a fulcrum and push, the whole island moves, and you're able to create a pathway for yourself to go and explore and learn about this unique habitat. And the way you do it is you go on these boats through the island, through the floating islands, and then get yourself to high points like hillocks where watchtowers are built. And that gives you an aerial perspective to have a look at these endangered deer species. So this is one of the rarest deer species on the planet. There has been a lot of issues. People have started ruining their habitat for their farming needs. There's a lot of grass cutting that happens there. And this animal being native only to that island because is facing a lot of issues. So how do they survive in these floating islands? How do they survive in these icebergs, so to speak? So they actually have very splayed hooves, very soft splayed hooves, which are well designed to make sure they don't sink every time they put their foot in the grass, but they're able to walk and also, interestingly, dance in them. So that's why they also call the dancing deer, because of their gait, especially during the rut. The males have these beautiful brow-shaped antlers, and they do these hopping dance in front of the females and to woo them. And that's quite a sight to see, especially if you're lucky, you're in a watchtower and they're in a clearing like this, you get to see them. So that's an example of the dancing behavior with the males. He's decorated his antlers and he goes trotting in his own way towards the females. And that is how they survive over there. So this is definitely one of the most unique places I visited in India. I've absolutely loved seeing the brown antler deer. I've seen them only once. There is a lot of hog deer. You have to be very careful in identifying them because a lot of the hog deer, when you see them inside the grasses, you think they are sangai, but they may not be in most cases. So we have to be very careful. We have to go early in the morning before they disappear back into the tall grass to look for them. But when you see them, you can actually appreciate how amazing this animal is and how unique its adaptations are to survive in this habitat. And like with any other place, when you go there, you also have other species to see. We already spoke about the hog deer, which is there in the bottom left. The fishing cats are there in good numbers in all these fundis. And of course, recently it's been found that the eastern grass owl is best seen in these grasses of Loktak Lake. So that's an eastern grass owl. Looks very similar to a barn owl, but slightly bigger and more studded, and it has much longer wingspan. So it's a very beautiful owl species. So along with the deer, so if you're not excited but just going to a place to see a deer, oh, I mean, why would someone go all the way there to see a deer? But it's pretty unique. The deer is quite beautiful. I mean, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know who took this photo, but I think it's an amazing picture. I saw it in a Mongabay article, but I really don't know who took that. And if that person is around, if anyone knows that person, please tell me. And I'd love to add his name to the presentation, his or her name to the presentation. So that's it about Loktak Lake, Cable Lambja, the Sangai of Manipur. And finally, moving to my favorite last animal in our list. And interestingly, the largest land carnivore in India. It's not the tiger. I'd like to reiterate, it's not the tiger. It's the Himalayan brown bear. Probably one of the most persecuted, least understood of the large carnivores that we have in our country. It is an animal that lives pretty much outside protected areas in most of its range. And until recently, we came across them as an accident in trekking or when you're going hiking or when you're going climbing some peaks. But we actually didn't know how to find them or where to find them in good numbers till very recently. I'll get to that in a bit. So the red part of the map that you see here is the range of the Himalayan brown bear, and the green is the Tibetan brown bear. And just to give you a little bit of trivia, all the brown bear species on the planet are one, all the way from the grizzly to the European brown bear to the Syrian brown bear that you see in orange, the Kamchatka bears, the Japanese brown bear, and the Tibetan brown bear, and of course the Himalayan brown bear. So the Himalayan brown bear is found, as you can see, in parts of India, Nepal, Sikkim, maybe parts of Bhutan, I'm not sure. And of course, going into the Hindu Kush mountains. So it's a very, very interesting species. And it is one that hibernates in the winter because of where it lives. So basically what happens every year is the bears emerge in the months of April from hibernating dens such as these. In fact, it is a ritual of mine to go there every April to see these bears come out of the holes. And sometimes we get lucky to see mothers with cubs in that landscape. And we see them in a snowfield, and then we wonder, what are they eating? Why do they even emerge so early when there's so much snow in the landscape? And that's when we realize that the first thing they see when they come out of hibernation is a village. and trash and people and sheep and goat and donkeys. So, or an army camp for that matter. So that's what the brown bears go for as soon as they come out of their hibernation. They haven't fed. You have to remember for 5 months, and they go to the villages. They cause a lot of havoc for the first 2 months, but then people have learned to live with them. I mean, I've seen some villages who have kind of accepted the fact that brown bears will come in the night and go out in the morning. They've realized that they have to build their houses in a different way. Some of them actually started using plaster because the brown bears could figure out that if they are able to pull the bricks out one by one, they can actually open up a house without actually making a noise. So I've actually seen that happen in one of the villages. So brown bears, very interesting in the months of April and May, but again a huge conflict issue throughout their range. But as the snow melts, the brown bears go to higher slopes of the Himalayas, where the grasses are out now. There's a lot of shrubbery. There is a lot of marmots which have come out for them to hunt. Some of them even fish in certain valleys in Suru, especially in Suru Valley near Kargil. I've seen brown bears feeding on trout. I don't know whether it's a very common behavior, but it does happen. So what we actually imagine happens only in Alaska or Katmai or Denali happens in parts of India too. So the brown bears move to higher slopes, and then later when you see them in autumn, you can actually see how much fatter they've become. Sometimes they can put on over 150 kilos or 100 to 150 kilos, and they're much fatter. And in fact, this is the biggest brown bear I've seen. It's not a very good picture because I saw it from very far. I was watching it with a scope, and I took a picture with my phone through the scope. But this guy was, I thought it was a cow initially when I saw him in the next mountain. That's how big they get before they hibernate again. And again, November is their peak activity time before they hibernate because they're trying to get as much fat in as they can, because some of the females even give birth in hibernation. So she needs a lot of reserves of energy uh, by the time she comes out in April and she feeds again. And one of the best places to see them, in fact, the place where all of these pictures are from, is Western Ladakh, especially around Dras and Suru Valley, is one of the best places to see them. And it's not really something I complain about because it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet, either in winter or in summer. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the people are lovely. You actually have to go out with the tribal communities there and have friends in Kargil who are working very closely with these communities, along with the support of Wildlife Trust of India. And they're actually setting up measures to mitigate the conflict and involve people more in the conservation and in the tourism industry of brown bears. I mean, it hasn't taken off in a big way yet, but we are taking the baby steps to bring the brown bear into the focus point of Indian large mammal wildlife viewing and conservation. And you have to realize that all of these areas is the war country. In fact, this is where the Kargil War of '99 was fought. It is not a protected area. It is a gun country. So there's complicated conservation issues that are layered up or stacked up in this place. But if the locals and the right authorities join hands, I'm sure it can go a long way in saving these bears. And just to give you an idea, we have around 12 different bears in one small hillock. And that's how densely populated this area is with bears. So that finishes the last mammal for me. I hope all of you enjoyed it. I've absolutely enjoyed going out and looking for these lesser known species. I mean, I don't usually restrict myself just to mammals, but mammals, of course, give me an extra sense of joy because I can get a larger audience jealous as compared to a reptile, which doesn't get many people jealous. So I always look for such mammals. I enjoyed the first time I saw a golden cat or a caracal. So it's a great feeling to look for things that others don't look for, or look for things that are less understood, and maybe you can put in a little piece of the jigsaw puzzle together in the road towards better understanding and conservation of that species. And I'd like to leave you all with this beautiful picture taken by a local from Kargil who started working with the bears along with us about 3 years ago. And today he's started documenting the bears himself. And this is a beautiful, beautiful picture taken, I think, 2 weeks ago as the brown bears came out of hibernation with the frozen Dras River in the background. And I think this is one of the best pictures of the Himalayan brown bears I've ever come across. So the brown bears and the red pandas have come a long way. The rusty spotted cat has come a long way. And I think it's only a matter of time before the rest of them join the list and actually make India a complete holistic wilderness experience. Thank you so much.